Hi everyone, good to see you again. Well, we talked about the counseling skills in the last class. Have you ever had a chance to apply the counseling skills in your life? Well, I encourage you to kind of apply what we learn in this class in your life setting, because you can have a sense, some effectiveness of counseling in your life if you apply. So I strongly recommend and encourage you to apply what we learned. And we talked about some individualistic perspective in lecture 5. And today we will apply that basic counseling skills and framework to the group perspective. So the title for the lecture 6 is Group Approaches to the Counseling. If we look at the objective, lecture number 6. The first one, identify components of group dynamic. Group is the gathering of 2 or more people. If we have 2 or more people, the group dynamic emerges in the group. And the group dynamic depends on many different factors, size, stage, and composition, duration, and also the purpose of the group. So we will talk about that. And also the group approach is pretty popular approach in counseling because it's very effective. You know, when we help a client in an individual way, we can use a certain time only for one person. But when we work together with a group member, for example, 10 group members, and we can provide the service is 10 times than individual counseling. That's why the group approach is so effective and popular right now, in particular some school setting. But not always group approach is effective. So we will talk about some plus and minus of group approach. The third one, we want to know some different types of group. The textbook explains 3 different types of group: psychoeducational, and also the counseling purpose group, and some psychotherapy-related therapeutic group. So we will contrast these 3 different groups. And also we want to know how to prepare if we want to make a group. You know, when you think about any setting in your life, group is not really new things. If you teach student, high school student as a mentoring and private tutoring, if you teach 3 students as a one group, that is a group setting. And if you want to make additional group for some other reason, we want to consider some other component for the effective group. So we will talk about that, how to prepare for the counseling group. And also the final thing, in last class we investigated the characteristics of 5 different stages in general counseling, and group counseling has a similar the pattern in stage, but it's a little bit different. So we will talk about that characteristics of each stage in the group procedure. So the first one, the figure shows the components of the group dynamic. If you look at the first one, it's the size. You know, if you have a private tutoring for the high school student, then maybe up to 3 or 4 is pretty small group. And if I provide a group counseling service in counseling office, it usually 7 to 9, so it's a middle size. And also if you have a class, in regular class, the class that I'm teaching usually 25, like that size. In middle and high school and public school in Korea is about around 30. If we have a big class, you know, I'm teaching counseling and guidance for the undergraduate level, that class is usually 70 students, is a big group. And each group has a very different dynamic. For example, when I teach the course in graduate level, which is relatively smaller size, students have more opportunity and there are more chance to speak, and so more interaction between instructor and student, and also between student and student. So they're more active and fast, and more interchange of thought and feelings in smaller group. But I don't really see that dynamic in a bigger group, like undergraduate, like 70 students. That's why the size really impact on the group dynamic. Composition, yes. For example, Ewha Women's University, we only have the female student. It's very different from the class which has male and female together. So the characteristics of participants of the group really impact on the group dynamic. And also duration. For example, like a regular semester in spring and fall, we have about 15 and 16 weeks as a whole semester. But that dynamics, I don't really that dynamics in winter or summer course, because we have only 1 month and we see each other almost every day from Monday to Thursday. And that duration also impact on creating the group dynamic. And purpose, I introduced that some different objective of different group. Some groups are preventive and more educational, and some groups are very remedial and reactive. So and also the counseling is in the middle. So the purpose of the groups are also impact on the group dynamic. The final stage, okay. Well, this is the online class, so we don't really see each other as a group. However, we are still learning as a whole group in cyberspace. And I also see some different dynamic based on the stage. We have passed the quarter of the semester. In the beginning of the semester, students were a little bit nervous and anxious in expressing themselves, and they're still exploring what would be the good and appropriate behavior in this cyber class. What would be a good way to ask a question? Still kind of tentative. However, as semester goes on, I see students more active involvement and more active participation to the class, because I see that difference in dynamic based on different stage. And we will go through that stage as a whole group. So if you look at the group dynamic again, the group dynamic is created based on many different components: size, composition, duration, purpose, and even stage. So we want to consider that component when we work as a group format. As I said, group approaches are pretty popular and effective because it has many advantages, like here. It's pretty efficient, it's time efficient and cost effective. So we can use our time in a more effective way. We can provide the counseling service to many students. That's the number one the advantage of the group approach. And cohesiveness. That is one of the key terms in group counseling. Cohesiveness is something that you feel when you work in a group, kind of connectedness with others. I'm sure you have experience of experiencing that. It is a kind of you are connected with each other, and we are a kind of one. That is called the cohesiveness. Cohesiveness is one of therapeutic factors in group counseling, which means when we feel kind of connectedness and collaboration as oneness with other, that climate help us to develop and resolve our problem. So that is the group cohesiveness is only based on group dynamic. It's not about individual related concept. It is group related concept. So cohesiveness is one of the advantages. And general support, if we have a good group climate, even though some group members are pretty anxious about a certain situation, but that client could get some support from other group member. That kind of support really relieve the client the symptom. But that is possible because they are working as a group, with other group member. Vicarious learning, that is a kind of indirect experience by observing others. Okay, I had an experience of running a group of students who transferred from other school. When I was working, teacher, every year I had several number of students who transfer from other school by moving and from different reason. And the student who transferred usually anxious in the beginning of the new school, and they don't know about the school song. They don't know friend's name. They are not familiar with the location in the school. But when I made a group of students who transferred from other school, they are observing others and they're interacting. Oh, I was not only the person. Oh, you've experienced the same way. Wow, I feel much better because my situation was better than yours, but you are still surviving in this school. I'm getting better. That types of interaction by observing others who has the same problem, that is the core, the component of vicarious learning. So they learn by observing others. That is the effectiveness of the group advantage. And microcosmos of society. When we work together in a group, the group members and actually they bring their own value, their communication style, their way of thinking and living into the group setting. So actually, if we have like 10 group members, that is a small group, and that actually is a small society. If they have some problem in expressing themselves, and they can simulate and they can try what they learn within the group member, that is a kind of trial of what they learn in a small group. And they are ready to apply what they learn in the real setting. So that is a kind of small, I would say small society and reflection of the real society. So they can practice what they learn in this group setting. So these are the advantages of group. But group also has some disadvantage. The first one is less intensity. When we work together with a group member, we have to take turn. We have to wait for our turn, and it actually decreased the intensity in the relationship with the counseling client, and also more intimidation. When they have some personal problem, and they may be anxious to share with others in the beginning of the session, so they feel more intimidated. So more intimidation as a group setting. And therapeutic efficacy. Usually counseling is effective even in a group setting, but not always. For example, if a client has very severe some personality issue, and if the client has severe communication problem, and then it will be very difficult for them to explore the issue. So some limitation are there in terms of therapeutic efficacy when working as a group, and also lack of flexibility, because when they work together, they have to schedule all together. So some flexibility issue as well, and lack of confidentiality. In the beginning of semester, they set the structure and the counselor explain what the confidentiality. So they agree and they sometimes they even write down as a contract, okay, I will keep confidential all information I learn in the group setting. But we cannot guarantee how they keep the confidentiality. So compared to the individual, it is more dangerous compared to the individual approach, because many group members, they may break the confidentiality. So groups are popular and effective because it has many advantages like this, but it also has some limitation like this. And I explained there are three different types of group. The first one is psychoeducational group. It's pretty wellness-based. It tries to increase and enhance the client and students' psychological adjustment and their development. And also it is more prevention-oriented. So before problems occur, counselor wants to provide as an educational intervention, so that is more prevention related and also education related. And usually this type of group is to help and student and client to learn new knowledge and new behavior. For example, if I give an example of this type of group, I would say study skills development group. So they come together, for example, a middle-sized group or even large group like a regular classroom. So the counselor explain what the study skills, why study skills important, what is this specific skills for the study skill, how to memorize well, how to take a note-taking well, how to use the time wisely, how to structure, and all types of sub-component of the study skill. Counselor, as a teacher, they instruct as a preventive way. That is a psychoeducational group. Another popular approach in this types of group is the school violence prevention program, because school violence is very hot issue all over the countries. So all educators try to decrease school violence by providing and this type of educational prevention program in the group setting. For example, like classroom guidance activity. So that is the psychoeducational group is one type. The second one is more advanced. Do you remember at the lecture number 1, we learned the difference between guidance and counseling and psychotherapy? This is in the same line. So we can apply that framework to understand the different types of group. So counseling is more awareness related compared to the psychoeducational group, and self-enhancement. We want to help the client to develop and increase their awareness, and also self-actualization to maximize their potential by counseling group. And also compared to the therapy here, it's more the conscious level of working. Otherwise, in therapy, it's more unconscious related and deep-seated issue as well. So one example of counseling group is, for example, a self-esteem building group. That is, that group is to help client to develop their potential and increase confidence of their study or their relationship with others or themselves. Or another type of group is how to increase self-control. If we have some student who has high impulsivity, we can make a group for them. So we can help them to control themselves by providing this middle type of counseling program and group. So that will be the second types of group. And the final thing is the therapy and therapeutic group. It's more remedial. So when they have more and deeper and severe problem, we can create a group to kind of help them to restore from their the problem, and also related some unconscious issue in a deeper level. And reconstruction is related with the psychodynamic approach, right? So as a group counselor, when we work together with other group member, we can try to analyze the client statement by exploring their past experience. It's more deeper level and analysis related and deep-seated issue. So psychoeducational group is more educational setting like school and counseling office, in community counseling and school counseling. And therapy group is more private practice. It's more small number of and deep-seated situation. So these are the types of group. And also the group counselor, they use a different therapeutic approach for their own group. So here I put down 4 different theoretical orientation which we just learned from the different class. So this is about the kind of review of what we learned from the previous class. Psychoanalytic. Do you still remember the key concept of the psychoanalytic approach? It's pretty deterministic, right? And also explore and focus on their past experience. And the client, they bring and they project their past experience on other client or counselor. That it's called, yes, transference. So counselor wanted to interpret and analyze their transference. And also we talked about the group work as a micro society. So they bring their lifestyle and pattern. And their lifestyle and patterns are related with their unconscious level of direction and motive. So we want to analyze that types of deep-seated and unconscious level of drive. That approach, psychoanalytic, try to focus on that area. However, the behavioral is totally different, right? We want to client to learn new behavior. So when they showed positive behavior, as a counselor, we provide positive reinforcement. Also, we can use some negative reinforcement. Do you remember that reinforcement, 4 different ways by providing and taking out some positive and negative stimulus? Positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, and punishment, and some timeout or extinction. So we can use that framework to change the client's behavior in a group. It's about the same way. And also, they learn by observing others. That is a vicarious learning that was espoused by the Albert Bandura social learning theory that is also related with the behavioral approach. And rational emotive therapy or rational emotive behavior therapy by Alice. Do you remember that ABCDE theory? When we have some situation that could work as an activating event. And that activating event cause our emotional reaction and behavior. And that, emotional reaction depends on our belief system. So we try to focus on that cognitive area in this approach. And finally, person-centered, when they feel they are welcome, when they feel they are supported, and when they feel they are understood by others. And Rogers believed they would have, they have an ability to recover and to get over the situation by themselves. So the counselor wanted to create that therapeutic climate and relationship as a group. So the basically use of theory in group work is about the same as the individual approach, but the application of the setting is different. The theory that we learned, it was more theory itself, but if we apply that theory in a group setting, we have 4 different orientation like this. And the next one, when we prepare for the group, these are the points that we wanted to remember for effective group formation. The first one, recruit members and group composition. We talked about the number of members, that means size, and also composition impact on the group dynamic. So we have to think about how many group members would be effective for this particular purpose of group. And what types of composition would be effective? Do we want to make homogeneous group in terms of gender? Do we want to make a heterogeneous group, very different group in terms of ability? So we have to think about that kind of combination. And also we want to screen if they have severe communication or personality problem, because they wouldn't get benefits of getting counseling service group in a group way. And types and size of group is a repetition of that. And duration and frequency of meeting. We have to think about how many times do we want to meet as a group. Do we want to meet usually once a week, about 40 to 50 minutes? That is a regular group counseling formation. But some school counselors suggest it would be better for counselors to meet in a shorter period of time in more frequent way. For example, twice a week, and each time about 30 minutes. So we have to think about what would be advantage and what would be disadvantage of using and selecting this type of duration and frequency. We have to have an appropriate space, very secure and comfortable, and also we have to think about a space that that we can get some confidentiality. And group leadership style, that means we have to think about our approach, because we have 3 different types of group. Each group has a different purpose. So when we run psychoeducational group, we want to show some directive style. When we run a therapeutic group, we want to be a kind of interpreter. When we run a counseling group, we want to be kind of the guidance or assistance or facilitator role. So we have to show some different leadership style. So these are the preparations for the group. And finally, we will talk about some different stage. And we learn 5 different stage in individual approach, and these are 4 different stages in group counseling. The first one is about the same. If I compare this to the individual, the first stage was to build rapport and make some therapeutic relationship, and it's about the same. However, in a group setting, there are some additional things, the group rules and goal, because they are work together as a group. So the group counselor wanted to make some kind of standard and rules that we have to follow that rules throughout the session. For example, as a group member, each member has to listen when others are talking. So good listening is one of the things the group member has to follow. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, if you are late, we have to wait for you. So please be on time for the group meeting. So that types of rules they wanted to develop as together, and they sometimes put their signatures and some agreement on it. And exploration and other exploration is another the big issue, because initial stage they are nervous and anxious, so they are they may feel some intimidated in the beginning, so exploration is the big issue. Transitional is it's more storming stage. Okay, some theorists use a different term. Initial stage, it's called like a forming stage, and transitional stage, in their perspective, it's called storming stage, because they experience very many different types of feeling in this stage, because they are working together. Well, I participated in this group. Did I make a good choice? Because they feel I feel not comfortable, and their problems are my problems are too serious compared to the others. So they're still anxious about their situation. They're still tentative, and so that is a trust and safety issue. Is it good for me to speak out my real issue? And also some group members, they try to dominate even group. They speak too much, and when someone speak out, and they just stop their conversation, and they try to show their power by doing some different behavior. And some client, they just want to stay away from the group. They look like some outsider, like a bystander. Those types of reactions are all the evidence of they are at the stage of a transitional. We want to normalize this type of negative reaction, because this is natural and this is normal. They usually go through this way. So when we look at some negative reaction from the client, counselor may be discouraged, but we don't have to, because we want to accept and we want to normalize their reaction. And next stage is a sense of cohesiveness. Once they overcome transitional stage, they work together and they really speak out their real issue. And as I said, cohesiveness begin to work. So they show, strong empathic understanding to each other. They are supported by others. They are understood by others, and they are providing and exchanging, feedback actively. And also they believe and they react as their own issue. So that increased ownership is evidence of a working stage. Once we reach this working stage, group roll and move forward by itself. It's pretty working well. In this case, the counselor just work as a facilitator and just facilitate the communication of the group member. And then if they reach the goal, finally they will have some increased self-esteem and increased empowerment, and then they would have some termination issue. For example, they still, some of the members may want to stay on the group because, groups are pretty good and they really understand me. I want to get some more feedback from them. But they have to admit, they have to finish because, as a group member, they learn some skills and they're supported. But the final destination, final goal is for them to live in their real world. So we have to let them know you may be still anxious. You have been pretty successful in this group, But you know what? It's time for you to go out to your setting and apply what you learn from here to your setting. So we have to think about termination issues in advance. So this, if you look at this 4 different stages, it shows some similarity to the individualistic and general counseling relationship procedure. But also you see some different issues like group rules and trust and safety issue, control power issue, and some cohesiveness. So today we talked about group procedure, group dynamic in different perspective, and also we talked about plus and minus of group advantage. Also, we learned the 3 different types of group and how to prepare the group. And also, finally, we learned the characteristics of each stage of group procedure. So we just reviewed the group approach to counseling, and next week we will talk about some different approach. You know, the lecture 5 and 6 focus on counseling in a little bit different way. But in next lecture, we will talk about some indirect service. It's called consultation, and also another one is supervision. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this lecture today, and if you have any question, please post your question. And see you in next lecture.